Greetings, my fearless ones, fearless network marketing friends. What's up? Todd Falcone here. Welcome back to the show. Here we go. So, one of the most devastating network marketing mistakes. Now, here's the thing. Like, I don't have a really small window of looking. I've got a very big window of looking at mistakes people make in this business. And one of the biggest mistakes that happens for people that grow an organization is they go into, let me back up. So when you start in network marketing, you've got nobody, because it's just you. You're brand new. You got nobody in the business. So what do? You're out there gathering customers and trying to get your business started. You're putting customers in, finding reps who actually do something. And so first you're all alone and you have one focus, and your focus is to go drum up some new business and to bring some customers in and put people on your product or put people on your service and to start building a team. That's what we do. And then when we start to see happen, and this is, look, you got to understand how devastating this is, and we're going to get into this during this episode. You start to build a team and your responsibilities begin to shift. And I've done trainings on this, I've done videos on this, and the reason I'm doing this again today is because I continue to see it happen over and over and over again. In fact, many of the people that I've personally coached one-on-one are fairly sizable income earners, between $200,000 and $500,000 a year, who have made this devastating mistake and they're freaking out about it. So we're going to get into that devastating mistake. Now, so what happens is you start to build and then your responsibilities begin to flow and ebb and change, because at first all you're doing is recruiting new customers and reps, and then you've got team members that you're working with, and now your responsibilities shift because now you've got to be working with some of the people on your team, helping those people get going, doing calls for them, doing Zooms for them, doing meetings with them, whatever it is. You're helping them, working with them, as you should. It's part of our responsibility to help them build a business, not just to sign them up and say, go get it, right? So, but what happens is the larger your organization gets, now you get to whatever, 300, 400, 500, 1,000 people, there's more pull typically on your team time, team development and team building time, and it can literally just suck you over into this other zone where you're spending all of this time working with the team. And that's fine that you're working with the team because it's something you should be doing. But the important thing is that you don't fall into this routine where that's all you're doing, right? So this devastating mistake that I'm referring to is the moment you go from personal recruiting to only working with people on your team. And I have a term that I've used for this, and I'll continue using it. It's called the kiss of death in network marketing. It's the moment you go from personal recruiting to only working with people on your team. And I understand that our responsibilities flow, and sometimes the team demands are going to be higher than they were the month prior, but I don't care how big the team's demands are and how many people are requiring your time. You still need to reserve time for yourself, right? You need to reserve time to continue to recruit new people, because you don't know what's going to happen with these people. And we've got to always be doing things to potentially replace people that may quit in the future. And people do, as you know, quit. And it's a great opportunity for you to lead by example, by setting the example for other people to follow, that you maintain personal production status, which I've done in a very recent episode. And the other part of it is, look, again, you got to think, people are watching you. And if all of a sudden you move into just management mode, just working with your team, then they're going to think, well, maybe I should just be working with my team. And now you got a bunch of people that are working with people but aren't actually doing anything personally. And the reason it's funny, because I wouldn't even say it's funny, the reason I've ended up coaching a bunch of these people is because they their business was growing. They kind of went into partial management mode, then they went into full management mode, and then went into full management mode. They stayed there for too long. They kind of lost their personal, their flow, their mojo, and getting back to recruiting for them was difficult. And now they're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm starting all over again because it's been so long since I recruited somebody. And then what happens is their check started to slide and it started to go downhill. They're like, oh my God, my check's going downhill. What's going on here? How do I get it back? Well, then they come over and they hire me and I get them back into a high level of accountability and get them back into personal production because they stepped away from it for so long. And unfortunately, by the time they catch it, their check's already gone on a downhill slide. And then trying to recover from that is difficult. And I've even seen people that were making $200,000-300,000 grand a year, got it up good, and then they went into management mode for too long, and their checks started dissipating. They couldn't find their way back to personal recruiting. So the only solution is you don't make that mistake. You stay in personal production. You never go away from personal production. Here's a perfect example for you guys that are married too, and I did this on some Zooms a few months ago. Like, so when you meet somebody, right? When you meet this new person, you're like all connected to them, and you're like paying attention to one another, and you're like kind of lovey kissy, and you love each other. It so feels good. And it's like you don't have any kids. You're like, and then you're like you love each other, and you love each other so much, you connect. All of a sudden, boom, you have a baby, right? Now, hopefully, you planned on it, right? But you have a baby, and then all of a sudden the two parents are like, oh, look at the little baby, and you're like looking at the new little baby, and you're like, oh, check it out, this is awesome. Look at little Johnny. And then, you're spending time on Johnny, and you're still kind of spending time with yourself as a couple, and then you're still like digging, ooh, I like you, ooh, rubbing up against each other again. Oh, boom, there's another baby. Now we got little Sally. And now you're like looking at little Sally and the other little baby, and you're like, oh, look at the little baby, look at the little baby. And then this happens for you guys that are married, you understand totally what I'm talking about, because all of a sudden all your focus goes to the children. And if in a marriage all of your focus goes to the children, ultimately over time this unit that you had ends up separating and ends up getting further and further and further and further apart, to where ultimately trying to get it back for some married couples, that ends up leading to divorce because they forgot about the unit. They forgot about the personal production in this case, right? The continuing to recruit and continuing to focus on our personal production, which, if we're using the marital example, is spending personal time focusing on one another and the children. Yes, you have the responsibility of focusing on the children, but don't forget about the unit, the family unit. That's a critically important thing for you to consider as you're growing a business, right? Is to make sure you're always focusing on personal production. So one of the biggest mistakes, and it's not unusual, it's actually very common. It's too common. It happens way too often, and it's a reason I'm even doing another video about it, because I did one probably 4 or 5 months ago, and it's time for me to revisit it, because if you've gotten into management mode, if you've gone too much into just working with the team, that is a devastating mistake. Why would you ever do that? I understand why you would do it, because of the demands on your time, but you still have to reserve time for yourself. Same thing in a marriage, same thing in this business. You're going to have a very successful career in network marketing if you stay in personal production mode, regardless of how large your team grows. I promise you, if you can just stay in that zone, then you don't have to worry about trying to get back there and go, man, it's so hard to get back on the horse and do this personal recruiting thing, because you never stepped away from it. You're just used to it, right? So look, that's the point of today. That's a devastating mistake. It happens way too often. It needs to stop. And if you haven't done it yet, now you've been warned. And so you'll remember, like, if you don't heed this warning that I'm giving you and you go into management mode, you're going to immediately go, oh yeah, I remember that Falcone guy, that video, that podcast that I listened to. He said something about this, and look, this happened to me. I didn't heed the warning. Or you can be really smart and take my 30 years of network marketing experience, and I'm telling you, I got no reason to lead you in the wrong direction. Heed the warning. Stay in personal production mode. Don't make this devastating mistake, and you'll have a group and an organization that continues to flourish long term. So I appreciate you for plugging into me. I don't know if you're on YouTube. Maybe you're Hey, if you're on YouTube, what's up, YouTubers? If you're listening to me on my podcast, on wherever you are, I mean, podcasts are everywhere, iTunes, wherever you might be plugging into me, I appreciate it. If you want to get the rest of this episode, other things that are associated with this and other great trainings, the conversation's taking place over at toddfalcone.com/episode 36. That's TODDFALCONE.com/episode 36. Appreciate you for plugging in. We'll see you on the next episode. Stay fearless, my friends. Thanks for watching.